Chapter 1. The Awakening. In the ruins of an ancient monastery, shrouded in secrecy and darkness, Apollyon, one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, was preparing for a task that would bring about the end of the world. The library where he resided was a forgotten place, hidden from mortal eyes. Its walls were lined with dusty tomes and forbidden manuscripts, and the air was thick with the acrid stench of age and decay. Flickering torchlight cast eerie shadows on the walls, enhancing the sense of dread that permeated the chamber. Apollyon was a figure of pure malevolence. His appearance was a grotesque combination of bestial features and demonic energy, with elongated horns, eyes that glowed with a sickly green light, and a twisted skeletal frame. His skin was a shifting mass of shadows and flame, constantly moving and writhing as if it had a life of its own. He stood before an altar of blackened stone, adorned with intricate runes and symbols, each etched with dark intent. With a voice that seemed to resonate from the very depths of hell, Apollyon began to chant in a language long forgotten by man. His words were a series of guttural, melodic incantations that spoke of chaos and destruction. The chamber seemed to pulse with dark energy as he performed the ritual, summoning the spirits of the damned to aid him in his quest. Each incantation was a call to the dark forces that resided in the infernal realms. The ritual required sacrifices, innocent lives to be offered to the abyss. Apollyon's plan was to perform a series of gruesome murders, each one a key to unlocking the power necessary to summon the son of Satan, a being of unimaginable strength who would rule the earth alongside him. The first victim was a lone traveler who had unwittingly ventured too close to the cursed ruins. Apollyon's minions, demonic creatures of various shapes and sizes, had captured him and brought him to the altar. The traveler was bound and terrified, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and horror. As Apollyon prepared for the sacrifice, he took pleasure in the man's fear. It was a deliciously potent emotion, one that heightened the power of the ritual. With a swift and brutal motion, Apollyon plunged a ceremonial dagger into the traveler's heart. The man's scream echoed through the chamber, a soul-rending sound that reverberated through the ancient walls. Apollyon relished the moment, savoring the taste of fear and suffering. As the traveler's life force ebbed away, it was drawn into the dark vortex that Apollyon had created. The energy surged around him, amplifying his power and bringing him closer to his goal. By the time dawn began to break, the ritual was complete. Apollyon stood victorious, his form crackling with dark energy. He could feel the presence of the son of Satan stirring in the abyss, waiting for the moment of his summoning. The first step had been taken, and the path to ultimate dominion over Earth was now clear. The city that Apollyon had chosen for his next series of sacrifices was bustling and vibrant. Its streets were filled with people going about their daily lives, unaware of the darkness that was about to descend upon them. Apollyon's minions, having infiltrated the city, began their work of spreading chaos and fear. The once lively streets quickly became scenes of terror as demonic creatures roamed freely, causing destruction and mayhem. Buildings were set ablaze, and the cries of the terrified populace filled the air. Apollyon watched from the shadows, a cruel smile playing on his lips. Each act of violence, each life taken, was a step closer to the final goal. The more suffering he could sow, the stronger he would become. As night fell, the city was engulfed in darkness and despair. Apollyon's forces continued their rampage, dragging victims to their deaths and performing grisly rituals in the heart of the chaos. The streets ran red with blood, and the air was thick with the stench of death. Apollyon reveled in the carnage, his enjoyment of the suffering palpable. By the time the first light of dawn pierced the darkness, the city had been transformed into a nightmarish wasteland. The once bustling metropolis was now a charred, smoldering ruin, its inhabitants either dead or fled. Apollyon's power had grown immeasurably, and the son of Satan was now within reach. With the groundwork laid and the sacrifices complete, Apollyon prepared for the final stage of his plan. The ritual to summon the son of Satan would be the culmination of all his efforts, and he was determined to see it through to the end. The fate of the earth now hinged on the success of this dark endeavor. As he prepared for the next phase, Apollyon couldn't help but take a moment to savor his triumph. The world was on the brink of annihilation, and he would be the harbinger of its destruction. The son of Satan would soon rise, and together they would forge a new era of darkness and despair. The stage was set, and the final act of this apocalyptic drama was about to begin. The world would soon come face to face with the full force of Apollion's malevolent plan, and there would be no escape from the darkness that was about to be unleashed. Chapter 2. The Harvest Begins. The city, now reduced to a smoking ruin, bore silent witness to Apollion's dark machinations. As the first light of dawn illuminated the devastation, the extent of his rampage became tragically clear. Buildings lay in heaps of rubble, streets were scorched and stained with the blood of countless victims, and the once vibrant heart of the city was a somber wasteland. Apollyon stood amidst the chaos, his form shimmering with malevolent energy. The air around him crackled with dark power, a testament to the souls he had consumed in his unrelenting quest. His eyes, glowing with a sickly green light, surveyed the ruins with a twisted sense of satisfaction. The city had fallen, and with it, another step towards his ultimate goal had been achieved. The next phase of Apollion's plan was already set in motion. His demonic minions, driven by their dark master's will, began to scour the remains of the city for survivors. Their task was to capture and drag them to the heart of the infernal ritual. Apollion's intent was clear. He would harvest every possible soul to fuel his final summoning and solidify his power. In the shadows of the devastated city, fear was palpable. The survivors, a mix of desperate and distraught individuals, huddled together, their faces etched with terror and disbelief. Apollion's minions, grotesque and menacing, prowled the streets, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly hunger. The demonic creatures were both predators and tormentors, spreading fear as they hunted their prey. Apollyon reveled in the carnage. He had always taken a perverse pleasure in the suffering of others, but now, with his power amplified by the souls he had already consumed, his enjoyment was even more pronounced. Each victim added to his strength, making him a more formidable force. The agony of the human souls was a symphony of torment that he relished, the perfect prelude to the final act of his dark play. The rituals performed by Apollyon and his minions were gruesome spectacles. In the center of the city's main square, a grotesque altar was erected, and the air was thick with the scent of blood and smoke. The rituals involved elaborate and horrifying ceremonies, where the screams of the sacrificed echoed through the darkened skies. Apollyon, standing as the central figure, chanted ancient incantations, each syllable dripping with dark power. His form wavered and shifted, becoming an embodiment of pure malevolence as he absorbed the energy of the dying. One of the most terrifying aspects of Apollion's power was his ability to manipulate the very fabric of reality. As the ritual sacrifices were made, the boundaries between the mortal realm and the infernal were stretched thin. The sky above the city darkened, and the once familiar skyline was replaced by ominous swirling clouds of black and red. The ground seemed to tremble and quake, a physical manifestation of the dark forces that were at play. As the days passed, the scale of Apollion's dark influence grew. The once bustling city was now a desolate shadow of its former self. Survivors, few and far between, were left to wander through the wreckage, their spirits broken by the overwhelming darkness that had consumed their world. Desperation and fear reigned supreme, and the hope that once existed was now a distant memory. Apollion's enjoyment was palpable as he walked through the ruins, his presence a constant reminder of the darkness that had befallen the city. He delighted in the sight of the broken people and the remnants of their former lives. Each act of brutality, each soul harvested, was a testament to his power and a step closer to his ultimate goal. In the heart of the city's main square, the final preparations for the grand summoning were underway. Apollyon had chosen this location for its symbolic significance, a place where the last remnants of hope had been extinguished and where the forces of darkness would make their final decisive push. The ritual circle, intricately inscribed with ancient symbols and runes, was ready. It pulsed with a dark, malevolent energy that seemed to draw the very essence of despair from the surrounding area. The time for the final summoning had come. Apollyon, standing at the center of the ritual circle, began the incantation that would bring forth the son of Satan. The air crackled with dark energy, and the ground beneath the ritual circle began to glow with an eerie light. The ritual was a complex and dangerous process, one that required not only the sacrifice of countless souls, but also the alignment of cosmic forces. As Apollyon chanted the final words of the incantation, the energy within the ritual circle reached its peak. The skies above the city were ablaze with a terrifying spectacle of dark flames and swirling shadows. The ground quaked violently, and the very fabric of reality seemed to stretch and warp. The atmosphere was thick with an oppressive, malignant force, a physical manifestation of the dark power that Apollyon had summoned. From the depths of the infernal realm, the son of Satan began to rise. His form was a towering, nightmarish figure of immense power, exuding an aura of dread and malevolence. The skies above the city grew darker, and the earth trembled as Malthor, the son of Satan, emerged into the mortal realm. His arrival was marked by an explosion of dark energy, a sign of the cataclysmic changes that were about to unfold. Apollyon watched with a cruel satisfaction as Malthor took his place at the center of the ritual circle. The son of Satan surveyed the devastation with a cold, calculating gaze. His presence was a harbinger of the new order that was to come, and his power was a force that would reshape the world in his image. With Malthor's arrival, the final act of Apollyon's dark plan was set into motion. The earth was now under the control of demonic forces, and the stage was set for a new era of darkness and despair. Apollyon's malevolent triumph was complete, and the world would never be the same again. Chapter 3. The Son of Satan Rises. The emergence of Malthor, the son of Satan, marked a turning point in the apocalyptic scheme devised by Apollyon. As the colossal figure of Malthor materialized within the ritual circle, the very essence of the world seemed to shiver in response. The sky above was a chaotic maelstrom of swirling black clouds and fiery red streaks, while the ground trembled beneath the weight of the demonic presence. Malthor's form was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Towering above any mortal being, he was an amalgamation of the darkest aspects of demonic design. His body was a grotesque fusion of sinew and flame, with glowing eyes that held an ancient, primal intelligence. His skin was a deep, otherworldly shade of black, and his wings, unfurled in an intimidating display, cast ominous shadows over the ruined city. Apollyon stood with an air of grim satisfaction, observing the arrival of his ally. The successful summoning of Malthor was a testament to his power and meticulous planning. The final ritual had been executed flawlessly, and now, with the son of Satan at his side, Apollyon was poised to bring about a new era of darkness. Malthor surveyed the devastation around him with a detached, almost clinical gaze. The ruin of the city was a testament to the successful execution of the first phase of their plan. The son of Satan was not one for pleasantries or idle chatter. His focus was on the task at hand. He knew his role in this dark scheme was critical, and he intended to play it to the fullest. "Welcome, Malthor," Apollyon intoned, his voice reverberating with a dark, infernal resonance. "The earth is ready for you. It is time to establish your dominion." Malthor's response was a silent nod. His presence alone was a catalyst for fear and despair, a powerful force that would further erode the hope of any who dared to resist. With a mere gesture, he summoned a wave of dark energy that spread across the city, amplifying the already pervasive sense of dread. The energy was like a living thing, slithering through the ruins and settling into the hearts of the remaining survivors, deepening their despair. As Malthor began to establish his foothold, Apollyon set his sights on consolidating their power. The city was merely a starting point. Their ultimate goal was to spread their influence across the globe. To do this, they would need to harness the fear and suffering of countless souls, converting them into a force that could rival even the divine. The two demonic entities set about their work with ruthless efficiency. Apollyon's minions continued their gruesome tasks, dragging survivors to the ritual altars and performing sacrifices to strengthen their dark power. Malthor, meanwhile, used his formidable abilities to extend their influence. His dark energy radiated outward, corrupting the very fabric of reality and sowing chaos wherever it touched. Reports of strange occurrences began to filter out from the city's outskirts. Rumors of shadowy figures and inexplicable phenomena spread among the surrounding towns and villages. The influence of Apollyon and Malthor was like a creeping plague, infecting the world with its malevolent touch. As their power grew, so did their reach, and the scope of their dark plan began to take shape. In the midst of this chaos, the High Priest Exorcist and the archangels were grappling with the enormity of the situation. They had been monitoring the disturbances for some time, but the arrival of Malthor marked a new and terrifying escalation. The celestial forces understood that they were facing a threat unlike any other, one that required immediate and decisive action. The High Priest Exorcist, a figure of both spiritual strength and profound wisdom, gathered his allies in a secluded sanctum. The walls of the sanctum were adorned with sacred symbols and ancient texts, each representing a facet of divine power and knowledge. The priest's face was etched with concern as he addressed his fellow archangels, Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. "The arrival of Malthor is a grave escalation," the High Priest Exorcist said, his voice heavy with urgency. "We are no longer dealing with mere demonic minions. The son of Satan represents a level of power and malevolence that could threaten all of creation." Michael, the leader of the archangels, nodded in agreement. His face, usually calm and composed, showed signs of grave concern. "The balance of power has shifted," he said. "We must act quickly to contain this threat before it spreads further. We must prepare ourselves for a confrontation that could determine the fate of the world." Gabriel, known for his role as a messenger and a warrior, was already in motion. He began to gather celestial artifacts and divine relics, each imbued with the power to combat dark forces. Raphael, the healer and protector, focused on fortifying the spiritual defenses of the mortal realm, preparing to counteract the pervasive darkness. The celestial forces knew that their task would not be easy. The power of Malthor and Apollyon was immense, and their plans were insidious and far-reaching. The battle to come would require not only strength and courage, but also a deep understanding of the dark forces at play. As Apollyon and Malthor continued their dark work, the High Priest Exorcist and the archangels prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The stage was set for a clash of epic proportions, one that would test the limits of both celestial and infernal power. The fate of the world hung in the balance, and the outcome of this struggle would determine the course of history. The rise of Malthor was not just the beginning of a new era of darkness. It was the herald of an apocalyptic struggle that would define the fate of all creation. The forces of light and darkness were on a collision course, and the outcome of their conflict would shape the world for generations to come. Chapter 4. The Reign of Terror. The city lay in ruins, a testament to the destructive power of Apollyon and Malthor. As the darkness deepened, so did the suffering of the survivors. The son of Satan, now fully integrated into the mortal realm, began to exert his influence, spreading fear and despair far beyond the city's borders. His presence was an ever-present shadow, a constant reminder of the new world order he and Apollyon were establishing. Malthor's reign of terror was marked by a series of strategic, brutal actions designed to solidify his control and spread chaos. The survivors, now a dwindling population of fearful and disheartened individuals, were subjected to relentless psychological and physical torment. Malthor's dark powers allowed him to manipulate their thoughts, turning even the most resilient minds into quivering wrecks. The city's survivors, once a vibrant community, were now mere puppets, their lives dictated by the whims of their demonic overlord. In the heart of the city, the ritual altars continued their grim work. The once sacred spaces had been desecrated, transformed into centers of dark worship, where sacrifices were conducted with ruthless efficiency. Each life taken was another step towards the complete subjugation of humanity. Apollyon reveled in the suffering, his power growing with each soul offered to the dark cause. His minions, ever vigilant, ensured that no survivor escaped the clutches of their malevolent designs. The rituals performed by Apollyon and Malthor were increasingly elaborate and horrific. They drew on the energy of the sacrificed souls to create powerful wards and curses designed to further entrench their dominion. The rituals not only strengthened their dark powers, but also bound the city and its surroundings in a web of fear and despair. The boundaries between the mortal realm and the infernal were growing increasingly porous, making the task of defending against the encroaching darkness all the more challenging. In the midst of this chaos, a glimmer of hope emerged. The High Priest Exorcist, with the assistance of the archangels, began to organize a resistance. Though the celestial forces were struggling to contain the spread of darkness, they were determined to fight back. Their strategy involved both direct confrontation and covert operations, aimed at disrupting the demonic rituals and providing aid to the beleaguered survivors. Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael worked tirelessly to counter the effects of Malthor's dark influence. Michael led the charge against the demonic forces, engaging in fierce battles to push back the invading legions. Gabriel, with his divine artifacts and relics, sought to neutralize the dark energies pervading the city. Raphael focused on healing and protection, using his powers to shield survivors and offer them a chance at resistance. The efforts of the celestial forces, though valiant, were met with fierce opposition. Malthor's demonic minions were numerous and relentless, their loyalty to their dark master unshakable. The battles were fierce and costly, with significant losses on both sides. The celestial forces, despite their divine strength, struggled against the sheer scale of the dark invasion. Amidst the chaos, the High Priest Exorcist devised a plan to directly confront Apollyon and Malthor. His knowledge of ancient rituals and sacred texts offered a potential means to weaken their powers and disrupt their plans. The priest's goal was to find a way to sever the link between the mortal realm and the infernal, thereby halting the spread of darkness and offering a chance for humanity to fight back. As the resistance grew, so did the desperation of the survivors. Many had lost hope, their spirits broken by the relentless onslaught of darkness. However, a small group of survivors, inspired by the celestial efforts, began to fight back. They formed an underground network working in secrecy to sabotage demonic operations and provide aid to those in need. Their courage and determination became a beacon of hope in the midst of despair. The tension between the forces of light and darkness reached a boiling point. Malthor and Apollyon, aware of the growing resistance, increased their efforts to crush any remaining opposition. The battles became more frequent and intense, with both sides suffering heavy losses. The city, once a symbol of hope and life, had become a battleground where the fate of humanity hung in the balance. In one particularly intense confrontation, the High Priest Exorcist and his allies managed to disrupt a major ritual conducted by Apollyon. The ritual, which was intended to further bind the city to the infernal realm, was thrown into disarray. The celestial forces seized the opportunity to launch a counterattack, pushing back against the demonic forces and reclaiming a small but significant portion of the city. The victory was hard-won and came at a great cost. The celestial forces were exhausted, and the survivors, though temporarily relieved, were still faced with the ongoing threat of darkness. The battle had proven that resistance was possible, but it had also highlighted the formidable challenge ahead. As the celestial forces regrouped and the survivors prepared for the next phase of their struggle, the dark powers of Apollyon and Malthor remained a constant threat. The conflict was far from over, and the forces of light would need to continue their efforts if they hoped to turn the tide. The struggle for the fate of the world was ongoing, and the outcome remained uncertain. The rise of Malthor had ushered in an era of darkness, but it had also sparked a fierce determination among those who refused to surrender. The stage was set for a climactic confrontation, one that would determine the ultimate fate of humanity and the world itself. Chapter 5: Shadows of Rebellion. As the weeks passed, the once great city now lay smothered under an unrelenting blanket of darkness. The presence of Malthor, the son of Satan, had reshaped the world into a nightmarish realm where fear and despair reigned supreme. Apollyon and his demonic legions continued their systematic campaign of terror, consolidating their control and extending their reach. Yet, in the midst of the growing darkness, a glimmer of rebellion began to emerge, a flicker of defiance that refused to be extinguished. The survivors, their spirits battered but not broken, had begun to organize themselves into a covert resistance. Led by a small but determined group of leaders, including a former city councilor named Maria and a skilled mechanic named Jacob, the resistance was driven by the hope of reclaiming their world from the clutches of demonic tyranny. Their goal was not only to fight back against the demons, but also to inspire hope among the remaining populace. The resistance operated from hidden bunkers and safe houses scattered throughout the city's ruins. They relied on old tunnels, abandoned buildings, and secret pathways to avoid detection by the demonic forces. The network of survivors worked tirelessly to gather intelligence, sabotage enemy operations, and provide aid to those in need. Their efforts, though limited, were a beacon of hope in an otherwise bleak landscape. Maria, a natural leader with a fierce resolve, led the resistance's strategic planning. Her experience in city governance allowed her to organize their operations efficiently, while her deep empathy for the suffering of others fueled her determination. Jacob, with his mechanical expertise, was crucial in creating makeshift weapons and devices to aid in their fight. Together, they formed the core of a resistance that refused to yield to despair. One of the most critical aspects of their strategy was to disrupt the demonic rituals conducted by Apollyon and Malthor. These rituals were the source of the dark energy that empowered the demonic forces and bound the city to their will. The resistance launched daring raids to sabotage these rituals, hoping to weaken the grip of darkness and buy time for their efforts. In a daring operation, Maria and Jacob led a small team to infiltrate one of the primary ritual sites. The site, a once grand cathedral now corrupted into a center of dark worship, was heavily guarded by demonic minions. The resistance team had to navigate through treacherous terrain, avoiding patrols and traps set by their enemies. With careful planning and precise execution, they managed to breach the cathedral's defenses and disrupt a major ritual. The interruption of the ritual was met with fierce retaliation. Demonic forces, enraged by the audacious attack, launched a counteroffensive against the resistance. The ensuing battle was brutal, with both sides suffering significant casualties. Despite the fierce opposition, the resistance managed to escape with valuable intelligence and a temporary victory. The disruption of the ritual weakened the dark wards surrounding the city, offering a glimmer of hope for those fighting back. As the celestial forces continued their struggle against the encroaching darkness, they received reports of the resistance's efforts. The High Priest Exorcist, recognizing the importance of these brave individuals, decided to make contact with them. The celestial forces had their own plans to counter the demonic threat, and they understood that working with the resistance could amplify their efforts. A secret meeting was arranged between the High Priest Exorcist and the leaders of the resistance. The meeting took place in a hidden sanctuary far from the prying eyes of demonic forces. The priest, accompanied by Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael, conveyed his appreciation for the resistance's bravery and discussed potential collaborations. "Your courage in the face of overwhelming darkness is commendable," the High Priest Exorcist said, his voice resonating with divine authority. "Together, we can turn the tide against Apollyon and Malthor. We have the power to disrupt their plans and restore hope to humanity." Maria, though exhausted and wary, welcomed the opportunity to work with the celestial forces. "We've been fighting against insurmountable odds," she said. "If we can join forces with you, we may have a chance to make a real difference." The High Priest Exorcist outlined a plan that involved combining the celestial forces' divine power with the resistance's knowledge of the city and its surroundings. The strategy was to launch a coordinated effort to disrupt key demonic strongholds, gather more intelligence on the enemy's plans, and protect vulnerable survivors. The celestial forces provided the resistance with valuable resources and support. Gabriel's divine artifacts were used to create protective wards and counter dark magic. Raphael's healing abilities were employed to tend to the wounded and bolster the morale of the resistance. Michael, with his formidable combat skills, trained the resistance fighters in advanced techniques for battling demonic foes. The collaboration between the celestial forces and the resistance marked a turning point in the struggle against darkness. The combined efforts began to yield results, with successful raids and operations disrupting the demonic forces and giving hope to the beleaguered survivors. Despite these victories, the battle was far from over. Apollyon and Malthor remained powerful adversaries, their dark plans continuing to unfold. The city was still under the shadow of their influence, and the struggle for control was ongoing. The celestial forces and the resistance had only begun to scratch the surface of the challenge that lay ahead. As the resistance gained strength and the celestial forces continued their efforts, the hope for a brighter future began to take shape. The fight against Apollyon and Malthor was an epic struggle, but the combined resolve of humanity and the divine was a powerful force. The battle for the fate of the world was heating up, and the outcome remained uncertain. The next chapter in the struggle against darkness would see the resistance and the celestial forces facing new challenges and uncovering deeper layers of the demonic conspiracy. The fight for the world's soul was far from over, and the stage was set for the climactic confrontations to come. Chapter 6: The Demonic Fortress. The tide of battle ebbed and flowed, and while the combined efforts of the resistance and the celestial forces had achieved some victories, the threat posed by Apollyon and Malthor remained formidable. The demonic forces continued their relentless campaign, and the city, though still scarred and battered, remained a key battleground. To further their plans, Apollyon and Malthor established a central stronghold deep within the heart of the city, a fortress of dark power from which they could project their influence and command their legions. This fortress, a towering edifice of blackened stone and infernal energy, was a symbol of the new order imposed by the demonic rulers. It was fortified with powerful wards and protections, making it a nearly impregnable bastion of darkness. Its architecture was both awe-inspiring and horrifying. Spires that seemed to pierce the sky, walls that pulsed with an ominous red glow, and shadows that writhed and twisted as if alive. The resistance and the celestial forces recognized the strategic importance of the fortress. It was not only a symbol of the demonic power, but also a hub of their operations. If they could breach its defenses and disrupt the dark plans being orchestrated within, they could deal a significant blow to Apollyon and Malthor's efforts. The plan to infiltrate and sabotage the fortress became a top priority for the united forces. Maria, Jacob, and the leaders of the celestial forces held a strategy meeting to devise their approach. The High Priest Exorcist, his face lined with determination, laid out the details of their plan. The fortress is heavily guarded and protected by powerful wards. We must approach with caution and precision. Our goal is to disrupt their dark rituals and gather intelligence on their ultimate plans. Michael, ever the strategist, nodded in agreement. We must identify and exploit any weaknesses in their defenses. Gabriel's artifacts can help us breach their wards, and Raphael's healing powers will be crucial in supporting our troops during the operation. The resistance prepared for the operation with meticulous care. Jacob, with his mechanical expertise, crafted specialized tools and weapons to aid in breaching the fortress's defenses. These included devices designed to counter the dark wards and disrupt the demonic energies. The celestial forces provided additional support, infusing their artifacts with divine power to counteract the dark magic protecting the fortress. As the night fell, the resistance and celestial forces mobilized for the assault. The plan was to strike under the cover of darkness, using stealth and precision to avoid detection. A small elite team was chosen for the mission, comprising the most skilled members of the resistance and the most powerful celestial warriors. The team approached the fortress from a hidden entry point, an old sewer tunnel that led into the heart of the stronghold. The air was thick with the stench of decay and sulfur, a reminder of the dark power that lay ahead. As they navigated the labyrinthine tunnels, the oppressive weight of the demonic energy grew heavier, a palpable force that seemed to press against their resolve. Upon reaching the fortress's outer walls, the team faced their first major obstacle, a series of powerful wards that pulsed with dark energy. Gabriel stepped forward, wielding one of his divine artifacts, a crystal infused with celestial power. He began the intricate process of dismantling the wards, his hands moving with practiced precision as he chanted ancient incantations. The air shimmered with divine light as the wards were deactivated, creating a narrow breach through which the team could enter. Inside the fortress, the team was greeted by a nightmarish landscape of infernal machinery and twisted architecture. The corridors were lined with grotesque statues and murals depicting scenes of torment and suffering. The very walls seemed to resonate with a dark, malevolent energy that filled the air with a constant sense of dread. The team moved with caution, their every step measured and deliberate. They knew that any misstep could alert the demonic forces and jeopardize the mission. The fortress was heavily guarded, with demonic sentinels patrolling the halls and dark enchantments protecting key areas. The team used their skills and abilities to bypass these defenses, relying on stealth and subterfuge to avoid detection. Their primary objective was to reach the central chamber of the fortress, where Apollyon and Malthor were known to conduct their most critical rituals. As they approached the chamber, they encountered fierce resistance. Demonic forces, alerted by the disturbance, launched a counteroffensive against the intruders. The battle was intense, with the celestial forces and resistance fighters engaging in a brutal struggle against the demonic minions. Despite the fierce opposition, the team pressed on, determined to complete their mission. They fought their way through the defenders, using their combined strength and tactical prowess to overcome the demonic forces. The battle was grueling, with each member of the team pushing their limits to hold back the tide of darkness. Finally, the team reached the central chamber, a vast, ominous space where dark rituals were performed. The chamber was dominated by a massive, pulsating altar, its surface covered in ancient runes and symbols. Apollyon and Malthor stood at the altar, engaged in a complex and powerful ritual designed to further cement their control over the city and its inhabitants. The sight of the two demonic overlords only heightened the urgency of their mission. Maria and Jacob, along with the celestial forces, prepared to disrupt the ritual and confront the dark rulers. The final confrontation was imminent, and the outcome would determine the fate of their world. With a coordinated effort, the team launched their assault on the ritual. Gabriel's artifacts were used to neutralize the dark magic, while Michael and Raphael led the charge against the demonic forces. Maria and Jacob targeted the altar, working to dismantle the ritual and weaken the dark energy that empowered Apollyon and Malthor. The battle in the central chamber was a fierce clash of light and darkness. Apollyon and Malthor, enraged by the intrusion, unleashed their full power against the attackers. The celestial forces and resistance fighters fought with everything they had, their determination and bravery standing in stark contrast to the overwhelming darkness. As the ritual was disrupted and the altar was dismantled, the chamber was filled with a blinding burst of divine light. The dark energies that had pervaded the fortress began to wane, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly. Apollyon and Malthor, though still formidable, were momentarily weakened by the disruption. The team seized the opportunity to retreat, their mission accomplished. They had dealt a significant blow to the demonic forces, but the struggle was far from over. The fortress, though temporarily weakened, remained a bastion of darkness, and the fight to reclaim their world was far from finished. As they emerged from the fortress, battered but victorious, the resistance and celestial forces knew that their battle was only beginning. The clash between light and darkness would continue, and the outcome of their struggle would shape the fate of the world. Chapter 7. The Heart of Darkness. The disruption of the central ritual had offered a brief respite, but had not eradicated the pervasive darkness that still enveloped the city. Apollyon and Malthor, though momentarily shaken, quickly regrouped and began to reorganize their forces. The temporary victory achieved by the resistance and the celestial forces was a significant one, but the battle against the demonic invaders was far from over. As Apollyon and Malthor consolidated their power, they began to devise a plan to retaliate against their attackers and reassert their dominance. Their response was swift and brutal, designed to crush any hope of rebellion and re-establish their control over the city. The demonic stronghold was fortified with even greater defenses, and the atmosphere grew darker and more oppressive. The once grand city now felt like a prison, its streets echoing with the sounds of torment and despair. The demonic forces, emboldened by their leaders' renewed determination, intensified their efforts to subdue the remaining survivors and eliminate any pockets of resistance. The High Priest Exorcist and the celestial forces were aware of the escalating threat. They knew that their recent success had only provided a temporary advantage and that the true challenge lay ahead. The celestial forces had to act decisively to prevent Apollyon and Malthor from regaining their full strength and executing their plans for further devastation. In response to the growing danger, the High Priest Exorcist called for an emergency meeting with the leaders of the resistance. The meeting was held in a secure location, far from the prying eyes of demonic forces. The atmosphere was tense as the group gathered to discuss their next move. The recent disruption has weakened their defenses, but Apollyon and Malthor are regrouping and preparing for retaliation, the High Priest Exorcist said, his voice grave. We must seize this opportunity to strike a decisive blow against them. Maria, her face marked by exhaustion but resolute, nodded in agreement. We need to find a way to weaken their hold on the city and protect the survivors. We've seen the extent of their cruelty, and we can't afford to let them regroup and reinforce their power. Jacob, ever pragmatic, proposed a plan. We've identified a number of key locations within the city that are crucial to their operations. If we can disrupt these sites and cut off their sources of power, we might be able to weaken their overall influence and give the survivors a fighting chance. The celestial forces agreed with the plan. Gabriel, with his divine artifacts, could help in neutralizing dark wards protecting these locations. Michael and Raphael would lead the assault and provide protection for the resistance fighters. The High Priest Exorcist would use his knowledge of ancient rituals to support the effort and ensure that their actions would have the desired effect. The resistance prepared for the operation with a renewed sense of urgency. They understood that this was a critical moment in their struggle against the demonic forces. The plan involved multiple coordinated strikes aimed at disrupting key demonic operations, including dark ritual sites, supply caches, and command centers. As the operation commenced, the team moved with precision and determination. They executed their plan with careful coordination, launching simultaneous attacks on the identified targets. Gabriel's artifacts were instrumental in breaching the dark wards protecting the sites, allowing the resistance and celestial forces to infiltrate and disrupt the demonic operations. The battles were fierce and chaotic, with the resistance fighters and celestial forces facing intense opposition from demonic minions. The demonic forces, though still powerful, were caught off guard by the coordinated assaults. The celestial forces and resistance fighters pressed their advantage, using their combined strength to push back the demonic defenders and achieve their objectives. One of the key targets was a major dark ritual site, a place where Apollyon and Malthor conducted some of their most significant and sinister rituals. The site was heavily guarded, with powerful wards and demonic sentinels protecting it from intrusion. The celestial forces, led by Michael and Gabriel, launched a determined assault on the site, using their divine power to overcome the defenses and neutralize the dark magic. Inside the ritual site, the team encountered a horrific scene. The altar, a massive structure adorned with grotesque symbols and ancient runes, was the focal point of the dark rituals. The ritual itself was in progress, with dark energy swirling around the altar and demonic minions performing the rites. The team fought their way through the defenders and reached the altar, determined to disrupt the ritual and sever the link between the city and the infernal realm. The confrontation at the altar was intense. Apollyon and Malthor, sensing the intrusion, appeared to confront the attackers. The battle that ensued was a clash of titanic forces, divine power against infernal might. The celestial forces and resistance fighters fought valiantly, using their skills and abilities to combat the demonic rulers and their minions. The disruption of the ritual had a significant impact. The dark energies surrounding the altar were dissipated, weakening the hold of the demonic forces over the city. The celestial forces and resistance fighters managed to escape the site, their mission accomplished, but their strength depleted. The victory was hard won, and the team knew that the battle against Apollyon and Malthor was far from over. As they regrouped and tended to their wounds, the High Priest Exorcist and the celestial forces assessed the results of their operation. The disruption of the dark ritual sites had weakened the demonic forces and provided a temporary respite, but the struggle was far from finished. The battle for the city continued, with both sides preparing for the next phase of the conflict. Apollyon and Malthor, though momentarily weakened, were still formidable adversaries. The resistance and celestial forces knew that they needed to maintain their efforts and continue their fight against the darkness. The heart of the city remained a battleground, and the struggle for control was ongoing. The celestial forces and the resistance were united in their determination to reclaim their world from the clutches of demonic tyranny. The outcome of the conflict would determine the fate of humanity and the world itself. Chapter 8. The Unseen Hand. The aftershocks of the recent victories reverberated through the city as the celestial forces and the resistance continued their efforts to push back the darkness. Despite the successes, the struggle was far from over. Apollyon and Malthor, though temporarily weakened, were far from defeated. Their influence continued to spread, and the city remained a perilous battleground where the fate of humanity hung in the balance. The destruction of the dark ritual sites had provided a significant advantage, but it had also sparked a renewed effort from the demonic forces. Apollyon and Malthor, enraged by the disruptions, had intensified their efforts to consolidate their power and reassert their control. The city was now rife with traps and ambushes, as the demonic forces sought to catch the resistance off guard and undermine their progress. Amidst this chaos, a new threat emerged, an unseen hand working behind the scenes to manipulate and control events. The true nature of this threat remained shrouded in mystery, but its impact was felt throughout the city. The demonic forces seemed to anticipate the resistance's every move, their actions always just a step ahead. It became apparent that there was a deeper, more insidious force at work. The High Priest Exorcist and his allies gathered in their hidden sanctuary to discuss the growing threat. The air was thick with tension as they reviewed recent intelligence and analyzed the patterns of demonic activity. Gabriel, his brow furrowed in concentration, shared his observations. The demonic forces seem to be operating with an almost preternatural awareness of our actions. It's as if they know our plans before we execute them. Michael, ever vigilant, nodded in agreement. We've faced formidable opponents before, but this feels different. There's a sense of a guiding hand, a force that's orchestrating events from behind the scenes. We need to uncover the nature of this threat and address it before it can fully manifest. Maria and Jacob, their faces etched with concern, listened intently. The recent battles had taken a toll on the resistance, and the prospect of a hidden adversary only added to their challenges. What can we do to counter this unseen threat? Maria asked, her voice steady despite the weight of their situation. The High Priest Exorcist, his expression grim, responded, "We must investigate the source of this manipulation. It may be that a demonic entity with significant power is operating behind the scenes. We need to uncover their identity and neutralize their influence." The celestial forces and the resistance agreed to launch an investigation into the mysterious force. Their plan involved gathering intelligence, analyzing demonic activity, and identifying any patterns or anomalies that could reveal the true nature of the threat. The investigation would be challenging, requiring both strategic planning and careful execution. As the investigation progressed, the team began to uncover disturbing clues. They discovered evidence of ritualistic practices and dark enchantments that seemed to point to a powerful demonic entity exerting influence over the city. The signs were subtle but persistent, a series of coordinated attacks, unnatural occurrences, and patterns of behavior that suggested the presence of a hidden manipulator. One of the key pieces of evidence was a series of cryptic messages found in the ruins of an abandoned library. The messages, written in an ancient and arcane script, seem to contain references to a powerful demonic entity known as Belial. Belial, a figure of considerable influence in the demonic hierarchy, was known for his cunning and manipulative nature. The celestial forces and the resistance delved deeper into their research, seeking to understand the full extent of Belial's influence. They discovered that Belial's powers were centered around deception and subterfuge, making him a formidable opponent in the realm of psychological warfare. His ability to manipulate events from behind the scenes made him a significant threat to their efforts. With this newfound knowledge, the High Priest Exorcist and his allies formulated a plan to confront Belial directly. Their strategy involved luring the demonic entity into a trap, using a combination of deception and divine power to expose and neutralize his influence. The plan required careful coordination and precise execution, as Belial's cunning made him a difficult adversary to confront. The resistance and celestial forces prepared for the operation with a sense of urgency. They devised a series of deceptive maneuvers to draw Belial out of the shadows and into the open. The plan involved creating false targets and spreading misinformation to provoke a response from the demonic entity. As the operation unfolded, the team executed their plan with precision. Gabriel's divine artifacts were used to mask their true intentions and create a false sense of security. Michael and Raphael led the effort to engage and distract Belial's minions, creating openings for the resistance to move in and execute their strategy. The confrontation with Belial was intense and complex. The demonic entity, though elusive, was eventually drawn into the trap. The celestial forces and resistance fighters faced a formidable opponent, as Belial's manipulative powers were on full display. The battle was not only a physical struggle, but also a mental one, as Belial sought to undermine their resolve and sow discord among their ranks. Despite the challenges, the combined efforts of the celestial forces and the resistance proved effective. The trap was successful, and Belial's influence was exposed and neutralized. The demonic entity, though powerful, was ultimately overcome by the determination and unity of their forces. The victory over Belial was a significant achievement, but the battle against the darkness continued. As the operation concluded, the High Priest Exorcist and his allies reflected on the lessons learned from their encounter with Belial. The victory had revealed the extent of the demonic manipulation and the need for vigilance in their ongoing struggle. The city remained a battleground, and the forces of light and darkness continued their epic conflict. The confrontation with Belial marked a pivotal moment in their fight against the demonic forces. The team had demonstrated their ability to confront and overcome hidden threats, but the struggle for control of the city was far from over. The celestial forces and resistance were united in their determination to reclaim their world from the clutches of darkness. As they prepared for the next phase of their struggle, the team knew that their fight was far from finished. The battle for the city continued, and the outcome remained uncertain. The forces of light and darkness clashed in an ongoing struggle for the fate of humanity, and the resolution of their conflict would shape the future of the world. Chapter 9. The Gathering Storm. The victory over Belial had brought a temporary reprieve, but had not quelled the turmoil that gripped the city. The darkness remained pervasive, and the struggle between the forces of light and darkness continued with renewed intensity. The celestial forces and the resistance faced a growing storm, as Apollyon and Malthor, despite their recent setbacks, remained formidable adversaries. The destruction of the dark ritual sites and the exposure of Belial's manipulation had significantly weakened the demonic forces, but Apollyon and Malthor were not easily defeated. They had regrouped and shifted their strategies, focusing their efforts on a new plan to consolidate their power and achieve their ultimate goals. In response to the escalating threat, the High Priest Exorcist and his allies convened a strategic council. The meeting took place in the heart of their sanctuary, a place of relative safety amidst the chaos of the city. The leaders gathered to discuss their next move and devise a plan to counter the renewed demonic threat. The recent victories have shown that we can strike a significant blow against our enemies, The High Priest Exorcist began, his tone resolute. But Apollyon and Malthor are not easily deterred. We must anticipate their next moves and prepare to counter their efforts. Maria, her face marked by fatigue but unwavering determination, spoke up. We've seen that their tactics are evolving. They're becoming more aggressive and cunning. We need to stay one step ahead and be prepared for any eventuality. Jacob, his eyes scanning the maps and intelligence reports spread across the table, added, Our recent operations have disrupted their plans, but they've adapted. We need to identify their new strategies and take decisive action to prevent them from regaining their footing. The celestial forces, including Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael, were in agreement. They understood the urgency of the situation and were prepared to lend their divine support to the resistance's efforts. Their combined strength and expertise would be crucial in facing the challenges ahead. Our focus must be on disrupting their new strategies and preventing them from establishing a foothold, Michael stated. We must identify key locations and targets that are critical to their plans and take action to neutralize them. The High Priest Exorcist and his allies devised a plan to confront the new demonic strategies head-on. Their approach involved a series of coordinated operations aimed at disrupting demonic supply lines, targeting strategic locations, and undermining their efforts to regroup and consolidate power. As the plan took shape, the resistance and celestial forces prepared for their next series of assaults. The operations were designed to strike at the heart of the demonic forces' new strategies, targeting key sites and disrupting their operations. The team was well aware of the risks involved, but remained resolute in their commitment to the cause. The first operation targeted a major demonic stronghold that had emerged as a key center of their renewed efforts. The stronghold, an imposing fortress of blackened stone and dark energy, was heavily guarded and protected by powerful wards. The celestial forces and resistance fighters would need to breach these defenses and neutralize the demonic presence within. Gabriel, with his divine artifacts, was tasked with dismantling the wards protecting the stronghold. His expertise in handling celestial relics would be crucial in breaching the defenses and allowing the team to enter the stronghold. Michael and Raphael would lead the assault, providing protection and support as the resistance fighters carried out their mission. The operation began with a coordinated assault on the stronghold. Gabriel, using his artifacts, worked to neutralize the wards and create a breach in the defenses. The team moved with precision, their every action designed to minimize the risk of detection and maximize their effectiveness. Inside the stronghold, the team faced intense resistance from demonic defenders. The stronghold was a maze of dark corridors and twisted architecture, with powerful enchantments and traps designed to thwart intruders. The celestial forces and resistance fighters pressed forward, using their skills and abilities to overcome the obstacles and advance toward their objectives. The battle within the stronghold was fierce and chaotic. The demonic forces, though caught off guard by the attack, fought with relentless ferocity. The resistance fighters and celestial forces engaged in a brutal struggle, their determination and bravery standing in stark contrast to the dark power of their opponents. As the team pressed forward, they encountered a disturbing revelation. The stronghold housed a series of dark rituals and experiments aimed at enhancing the demonic forces and solidifying their control over the city. The rituals involved the summoning of additional demonic entities and the use of dark magic to strengthen their influence. The discovery of these rituals added a new dimension to their mission. The team realized that disrupting these operations was crucial to weakening the demonic forces and preventing them from gaining additional power. They focused their efforts on neutralizing the dark rituals and halting the experiments. The confrontation with the demonic entities involved in the rituals was intense. The team fought against powerful adversaries, using their combined strength and tactical prowess to overcome the threats. The battle was a test of their resolve and skill, as they faced formidable opponents determined to protect their dark plans. Despite the challenges, the team succeeded in disrupting the dark rituals and halting the experiments. The stronghold was left in disarray, and the demonic forces were left reeling from the impact of the operation. The victory was hard-won, but it marked a significant step in their ongoing struggle against the darkness. As the team regrouped and assessed the results of their operation, they knew that their fight was far from over. The demonic forces remained a formidable adversary, and the struggle for control of the city continued. The forces of light and darkness clashed in an epic battle, with the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. The celestial forces and resistance fighters remained united in their determination to reclaim their world from the clutches of darkness. The battle was ongoing, and the outcome remained uncertain. The struggle for control of the city continued, and the resolution of their conflict would shape the future of the world. Chapter 10. The Final Confrontation. The city lay in a state of uneasy calm after the recent operations. The celestial forces and resistance fighters had dealt significant blows to Apollyon and Malthor's plans, but the demonic threat remained ever present. Apollyon, infuriated by the disruption of his grand design and the weakening of his forces, was preparing for a final, devastating counterattack. The High Priest Exorcist and his allies were acutely aware of the gravity of the situation. Their victories had come at great cost, and the demonic forces were now regrouping with a renewed determination to crush any resistance. The time had come for a decisive confrontation that would determine the fate of the city and, by extension, the world. The celestial forces and resistance fighters gathered in their hidden sanctuary, their faces etched with a mix of exhaustion and resolve. The High Priest Exorcist addressed the assembled leaders, his voice carrying the weight of the impending battle. "We've reached a critical juncture," he began. "Apollyon and Malthor will not let their ambitions be thwarted. They are preparing to unleash their full fury upon us. We must confront them directly and put an end to their plans once and for all." Maria, her eyes burning with determination, spoke up. "We need to strike at their heart. Apollyon's strength lies in his ability to manipulate and control. We must disrupt his power base and eliminate him before he can complete his plans." Jacob, ever the strategist, nodded in agreement. "We've identified the location of Apollyon's primary stronghold. It's a fortress of immense power, heavily guarded and protected by dark magic. Our objective is clear: breach the stronghold, confront Apollyon and Malthor, and bring an end to their reign of terror." Gabriel, Michael, and Raphael, their celestial presence a beacon of hope amidst the darkness, prepared for the final battle. The celestial forces would provide crucial support in neutralizing the dark magic and defending against Apollyon's minions. Their combined strength and divine power would be pivotal in the impending confrontation. The final assault was meticulously planned and executed. The resistance fighters and celestial forces approached Apollyon's stronghold with a sense of grim determination. The fortress, a towering structure of blackened stone and dark energy, loomed ominously on the horizon. The air around it crackled with malevolent power, a testament to the strength of the demonic forces within. As they neared the stronghold, the team faced fierce resistance from demonic sentinels and dark magic. The demonic forces, alerted to the impending attack, had fortified their defenses and prepared for a desperate defense. The battle was intense and chaotic, with the celestial forces and resistance fighters fighting valiantly against the onslaught of demonic minions. Gabriel used his divine artifacts to breach the wards protecting the stronghold, creating an opening for the team to enter. Michael and Raphael led the assault, their divine power cutting through the darkness and providing critical support. The resistance fighters pressed forward, their determination driving them to overcome the obstacles in their path. Inside the stronghold, the atmosphere was thick with dark energy. The team navigated through a labyrinth of twisted corridors and sinister chambers, their path illuminated only by the dim glow of their weapons and the occasional flash of divine light. The stronghold was a nightmarish realm of shadows and dread, a reflection of Apollyon's twisted ambitions. As they reached the heart of the stronghold, they encountered a sight of sheer horror. Apollyon and Malthor stood at the center of a grand ritual chamber, surrounded by an array of dark artifacts and arcane symbols. The chamber was a focal point of dark magic, with powerful enchantments and summoning circles etched into the floor. Apollyon, his presence commanding and terrifying, turned to face his attackers. His form was a grotesque blend of demonic power and malevolent intent, his eyes blazing with an unholy fire. Malthor, equally formidable, stood by his side, his form exuding an aura of dark authority. "So, the so-called heroes come to challenge me," Apollyon intoned, his voice a thunderous rumble that resonated through the chamber. "You have proven yourselves a thorn in my side, but your efforts are in vain. I am beyond your reach." The celestial forces and resistance fighters prepared for the final confrontation. The battle was a clash of titanic forces, divine power against infernal might. Apollyon and Malthor, though formidable, were not invincible. The combined strength of the celestial forces and the resolve of the resistance fighters created a potent force against the darkness. The battle within the ritual chamber was fierce and brutal. Apollyon and Malthor unleashed their full power, summoning dark energies and demonic minions to aid them. The celestial forces and resistance fighters fought with unwavering determination, using their skills and abilities to combat the demonic onslaught. As the battle raged, the High Priest Exorcist invoked powerful, ancient rituals to counteract the dark magic. His knowledge of sacred rites and divine spells provided a crucial advantage, disrupting Apollyon's control over the chamber and weakening the demonic forces. The confrontation reached its climax as Apollyon, enraged by the resistance's tenacity, unleashed a final, devastating assault. The chamber was filled with blinding light and searing darkness as the forces clashed in a cataclysmic struggle. The High Priest Exorcist, Gabriel, Michael, and Raphael fought with everything they had, determined to end Apollyon's reign of terror. In a final, desperate move, the High Priest Exorcist combined his powers with the celestial forces, channeling a surge of divine energy into a powerful ritual. The energy lashed out at Apollyon, piercing through his defenses and overwhelming his dark magic. The ritual was a culmination of their efforts, a last, decisive strike against the demonic tyrant. Apollyon, caught off guard by the sheer force of the attack, was overwhelmed by the divine power. The dark energies that had once protected him were shattered, and his form was enveloped in a blinding light. With a final anguished roar, Apollyon was cast down, his power broken and his influence severed. The stronghold, its dark enchantments shattered, began to collapse. The celestial forces and resistance fighters, battered but victorious, made their escape from the crumbling fortress. The battle was over, and the forces of light had triumphed over the darkness. As the dust settled and the echoes of the battle faded, the High Priest Exorcist and his allies reflected on their hard-won victory. The struggle had come at great cost, and the city lay in ruins. But defeat of Apollyon and Malthor marked a significant turning point in their fight against the demonic forces. The celestial forces and resistance fighters knew that their victory was only a beginning. The battle against the darkness was ongoing, and the threat of future conflicts remained. The celestial realms and the human world would need to remain vigilant, prepared for the challenges that lay ahead. The High Priest Exorcist, his resolve unshaken, addressed his allies. "The battle is won, but the struggle continues. We have defeated Apollyon and Malthor, but the darkness is not vanquished. We must remain vigilant and prepared for whatever comes next." The celestial forces and resistance fighters, their spirits bolstered by their victory, prepared to face the future. The city, though scarred and battered, held the promise of renewal and hope. The forces of light had triumphed over the darkness. But the fight for the soul of humanity was far from over. As they looked toward the horizon, the High Priest Exorcist and his allies knew that their struggle was part of a larger conflict, a battle that spanned realms and ages. The forces of light and darkness would continue their eternal struggle, and the resolution of their conflict would shape the future of the world. Thank you so much for joining us on this thrilling adventure. We truly appreciate your time and enthusiasm in exploring Demon's Throne, the Age of Apollyon. If you found our story engaging and enjoyable, we would be deeply grateful if you could take a moment to like this video, share it with friends and family, and subscribe to our channel. Your support not only helps us reach a wider audience, but also motivates us to continue crafting the stories you love. But hold on, this saga is far from over. The forces of darkness may have been pushed back, but a greater storm is brewing on the horizon. Stay tuned for part 2, where the stakes will rise, new enemies will emerge, and the battle between light and dark will reach unprecedented heights. Are you ready to witness the next chapter in this epic tale? We are committed to bringing you more captivating content, and your encouragement plays a crucial role in that. Thank you once again for being part of our journey.